All right, looks like we got a good number of people here. Welcome to the Tools and Resources to Promote Recovery and Donation, both for food and composting. So we're going to start out today with our first speaker, Patrick
Bultema.
Bultema, because I know I heard you say it and I was going to say it wrong. Bultema. All right. Patrick Bultema is an experienced venture-backed executive widely recognized as a company and industry maker. He has served as CFO, founder, and executive chairman of numerous companies. Bultema was most recently executive director of innovation at Colorado College. Today, Patrick is chairman, CEO, and founder of Food Maven, an investor-backed startup innovating the wholesale food system. Patrick grew up on a family farm where he and his family continue to grow food. So it's painful for him to know that 40% of what farmers produce ends up in landfills, and as a personal motivation for the work he's doing at Food Maven. With a BA from Cal State University Chico and Master's from Princeton, he values stewardship and approach to our planet and its inhabitants. Let's welcome Patrick.
Great, thank you. Well, are you okay with me sitting? It just seems like it's kind of a more casual, kind of nice way. So, and I'm welcome. If you want to kind of interrupt or ask questions as we go, I'm good with that as well. So yeah, I grew up on a family farm. My family is still, my brother's a conventional farmer, so he's, back on the family farm. My kind of extended family, my cousins are lumber family farms, Lumberg Organic. So very, very early in the kind of organic natural product as well as kind of sustainable practices, and for a number of years was on the board of Lumberg Family Farms. But the family had started doing organic natural in the 60s when basically all you could do was sell, through health food stores to hippies. That's what the market was when we first got started. Actually, and another connection there, so Walter Robb's been the co-CEO of Whole Foods who just stepped out, has been a long-standing kind of family connection and relationship, is actually on the board of Food Maven, and we've got a tight partnership with Whole Foods. It's kind of part of that. So I'd like to think I at least have some understanding for the front end of the food system. I've been involved on kind of the producer side and had some insights. As kind of taking a break from kind of venture CEO roles, was in an endowed chair at Colorado College, and Food Maven really came out of that time when I was at Colorado College, helping them get an entrepreneurship program going at the school. And it was a student group initially that was really focusing on more the typical food rescue. So, it started off as a student club that was getting food from the cafeteria, taking it to charities, and then expanded to, grocery stores and other things. And as I worked with that team, we started to work back up into the food system. And that was really kind of how, the genesis of where Food Maven came to be. I think the thing that is, it's kind of astounding to kind of think about. I think we all know it, but when you see it or experience it, it feels a lot more personal. That hundreds of billions of dollars of perfectly good food is going missing in the U.S. food system every year. 40%, again, USDA number, 40% of ag production is getting lost. Picture of my brother out there dating with his little girl and harvesting a crop, and again, I grew up knowing how hard it is to make that, so it's painful to think that is happening. And a third of, depending on whose numbers, sometimes I hear it's 30 or 40% of what's going into landfills is food waste, and it's just an environmental train wreck. It's not just the representing the methane gas and all of the impacts there, but all of the natural resource that was used to produce food that ends that way just seems horribly tragic. The thing though that we've kind of come to is those are just the symptoms. So one of the challenges here, and again, I'm all for composting and figuring out better, more enlightened things to do with waste, but our approach has been to say, wait a second, that 40% of production is getting lost and 30% what's going into landfills are symptoms. Where it actually happens is really two places, but for us, our focus is on the food system. So, it does not somehow there's not food that's getting produced, it's waste. It's perfectly good food that's going missing and ultimately turns into waste. And that was really the thing that we said we were going to focus on. That complex maze of, thousands of big distribution centers, tens of thousands of distributors, hundreds of thousands of producers, and the loss that was occurring at every step of the system. Now, again, in defense of the U.S. food system, I would say, it is a remarkable thing that as long as you have money to pay, we always have everything all the time. That's an amazing thing. And when you actually are inside and see these, multi-million square foot distribution centers and the amount of food that moves through them every day, it is a remarkable thing. But still, it comes at just an enormous cost. So how in the world is so much food getting lost? And rather than I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing at Food Maven, but I thought what might be more interesting is to give you some of the insights that we've gained on why so much food goes missing in the system. The first is, again, this is almost like a brilliant insight into the obvious, but it probably kind of is, worth saying, is part of the challenge is just the inflexible nature of food production, right? If you plant carrots, you can't magically turn them into beets midway through the growing season, right? If you plant a crop, you're going to harvest that crop. You don't get to somehow change. So it's a rather inflexible means of production. And especially when my family has orchards, you plant an orchard, you're committed for 25, 30 years to that crop. The cost of switching is really kind of overwhelming. And if you're in the livestock business, you've probably heard the joke about the chicken or the chicken and the pig at the bacon and egg breakfast. Chicken's involved, the pig is committed. If you're in the livestock business, you're committed to those animals, right? And you've got a cycle where you're going to have to harvest. And it's also, it's not just on the production side, it's on the buy side as well. If you're a buyer, because of the nature of these production cycles, you got to make purchasing decisions way before, and you really don't know what's going to happen on demand. And so those are kind of decisions that have to get made way out in advance. And that's one of the contributing factors for why it's so hard to always, to have the system work and not have some oversupply and loss that just naturally occurs. A little historical perspective, I think, is also kind of helpful in understanding kind of where we are in the food system. If you look at how our food system came to be, before the kind of 1940s and 50s, if you're talking about the 30s, almost all food was local. And so you would have local farmers and little local farm groups and kind of small grocery chains, maybe small little regional chains, and they would contract with local farmers and producers and dairy and egg producers. And yeah, there were some national brands. Van Camp Pork and Beans is 1851. Spam has been around for a long time. So there were some natural brands, but that was kind of the nature of the food system. It was flexible, it was agile, it had a lot of positive, characteristics, but it was not always so dependable. It was very seasonal in character. And so that was part of the move to kind of the industrialization of food that really happened in the 1940s and 50s. And by the way, one of the things that we've kind of come to realize is the food system really hasn't changed much since the 1950s. We pretty much have a 1950s style food system. I will tell you, we're in some of the largest, again, grocery distribution centers, and it's astounding to me. When I walk into the departments and, there's a supervisor, like one of them, Skip, who runs produce, has been there 48 years. It's the only job he's ever had. He's worked his way up. He was a picker, and he's worked his way up into that, so he now manages the produce department. If you walk around and look at Skip's screen, it's a COBOL CICS session that's running. It's a computer system from the 1970s, and this is the second largest grocery chain in the United States. So the system really is still very much of this kind of 1950s. It works fine at putting through a lot of product and keeping the shelves stocked. It's all clipboards and phone calls as soon as there's exception processing. There's no kind of information or data or automation around that. And that's where, again, that's this kind of contributing thing. So how did we get this kind of 1940s, 50s style system? And I think it's an interesting kind of historical perspective. And I realize it's a little bit of an aside, but I find it curious, so I'm going to bore you with it. Really, our food system had three major factors that kind of created the formation as it is. And first is the Marshall Plan. That's kind of a 1946. The big concern was that how can you promote democracy, how can you promote recovery after the World War and the decimation of the food system in Europe and Asia? How can you actually rebuild without a food system? And it's really hard for people to have an enlightened perspective on their political future if they can't eat. And so one of the priorities of the Marshall Plan was the US is going to feed the world. And to be able to pull that off, you had to focus on commodity crops that you could ship a long way. And really the roots of our farm program as it exists goes back to that, and a lot of weird food for diplomacy things that kind of happened subsequently. But one of the major contributing factors to the food system we have goes all the way back to 1946 and the Marshall Plan and this need to create mass amounts of food that we could ship a long way. The second, there was just a general trend at the same time of kind of industrialization. So you have conglomerates forming, you have, the grocery stores are kind of coming together. There's just a general trend towards industrialization of everything. And then the third factor is the whole mass media, mass brands. So consumer packaged goods, you could create these mass food companies, and now if you've got a mass system that'll ship things a long way, and you can advertise on only 3 channels, and ho 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 Green Giant, you can create brands and create a tremendous amount of power in that food system. So, one of the other factors has been that kind of mass media and mass brands that got created where this big kind of homogenous food system really worked well for all of that. Now, the irony is none of those things exist anymore in the same way, right? But yet we're still left with that system. Where Colorado is one of the produces, Rocky Ford, Colorado, in eastern Colorado produces a lot of melons. Virtually all of those melons get shipped to a fruit company in California to get shipped back to Colorado, where 20 to 30% of them are thrown away. And oh, by the way, 20 to 30% of them are left at the packing shed or in the field as well. So that's kind of this big long haul industrial system that is clearly one of the contributing factors to the loss in the system. The second thing is we've gotten to a place of this kind of abundance expectation. The expectation among consumers is that you always have everything all the time. And it's actually to the point where the conventional kind of accepted wisdom in the grocery industry is if somebody comes to buy something at the store and you're out of it, there's a 40% chance on that one event that their buying pattern will change. They'll switch grocery stores. So the grocery store believes that you always have to have everything all the time to the level of, it looks like a work of art. The challenge is that's actually resulted in doubling of food loss at the grocery store since 1974. So just at the grocery store, there's a huge doubling. But just statistically speaking, if you're going to always have if you always have to have everything all the time, the only way you can do that, statistically speaking, especially given a 1950s style logistics system, is to dramatically oversupply the system. And the system oversupplies at every single step along the way, from the producer to the packing shed to the wholesaler to the distributor to the big distribution center to the grocery store. Oversupplies 10 to 20% at every single step to be able to kind of make that expectation of always having everything all the time. And that's one of the things that we focus on, is just the amount that gets lost through oversupply. The system really lacks the flexibility to deal with it, so it just falls out. It's perfectly good food, and again, we see it day in and day out. Perfectly good food that ends up at the big distribution center, there's no place for it to go, and they just roll the truck to take it to the dump because it doesn't have any place to go. Dates, these confusing dates are a contributing factor. Usually people think, though, that dates are the biggest issue, and I wouldn't say that they really are at all. But it does create kind of an interesting dynamic, and a lot of stuff falls out of the system. Dates at the grocery store are one thing, but if you're a month from the date and you're midway through the food system, it'll never make it forward. Why would you advance it? There's no time. So it's going to fall out of the system even with a month on the date because it has no time to progress in the system. Did you know the only thing that's federally regulated on dates is baby food? Formula, yeah. So, everything else is it's also just this complex, and our friends at Harvard, I saw somebody from the Harvard Food Policy Center that was here yesterday, and, there's a lot of folks that are trying to do something more sensible on dates. My family, we put dates on our product, and, it's like, I guess there's some rationale to them, but it's hard to discern. And a lot of it is, again, it's just this rigid system where there's just no room. The next round of the trucks show up, they have no place to put it, it's not going to go out. And oh, by the way, the next trucks are going to be here in 2 hours, and they call the vendor up and say, hey, we're rejecting this. And they'll say, because we just don't like the way these units look or whatever. But it really is a kind of an oversupply and an inflexibility of the system, and the next round of trucks are going to show up, and so they literally put, big yellow dump sticker on a whole semi-load of product to just go away. So hopefully, again, it gives a little sense of, we're focused on this. Where does it happen? Why does it happen? How can we kind of intervene and do something? So it's, the inflexible nature of food production, this kind of 1950s style logistics system, the abundance of expectation and the resulting oversupply, confusion around dates, and then inflexibility. And one of the other things I could put here, we focus also a lot on local. Local really has a hard time getting into the food system. You're either in the big food system, so there's lots of people that talk about, let's do farm to table. There's no system for it. So, it's just like it's a nice intention, but no system to really support it. Now, again, part of it is, you'd say, wait a second, how in the world could anybody in the United States, if there's $200 billion of food getting thrown away every year, how is it possible that anybody in the United States would not have enough or adequate quality of food available? And there is obviously food that gets donated, but it's a pretty teeny percent. It's maybe 5, maybe 10% of what's getting lost in the system actually gets, goes to donation. And part of the challenge is there's no economic incentive. There's perversive kind of things around IRS's rules on limiting tax, credits, but they're really, most of it, I will tell you, is just because the nature of the way the system works. The charitable world never even has visibility to so much of what's getting lost. And so what we really kind of said is that we need to create an economic compelling solution. It's kind of a little bit of a, I've had many people, including Walter Robb, CEO of Whole Foods, tell me that, what we're doing seems like it's kind of brilliant and so obvious that why isn't somebody else doing this? And, oh, by the way, he's in a position to know that no, nobody has really said, how can we create an economic compelling solution for this loss that's occurring in the system? And that's really what Food Maven did. We said if we can figure out how we can capture, how we can create contracts and relationships and all the logistics capabilities to do it, that with $200 or $300 billion getting lost, there's got to be, it's the old joke about the optimistic kid digging through all the horse poop. With all this poop, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. So we kind of thought that there had to be a pony in here somewhere. And so our basic premise was if we capture that food and make a market for it, we could have a positive impact, not just on profits of suppliers and our buyers, but a positive impact on the social kind of energies as well. And part of our notion was to really make an impact on donation and for hunger relief, food justice, as well as kind of environmental impacts. So we capture this lost food from our sellers. Our suppliers are everything from local farms to packing companies to the big grocery distribution centers and kind of everything in between. We then create, and we're using kind of big data and all kinds of information-enabled things, but it's a digital internet marketplace. Our buyers are professional food businesses. So it's restaurants, commercial kitchens, commercial food business, or institutional kitchens and commercial food businesses. They are food professionals. So we didn't want to deal with consumers on this food, right? Because you have to do a little explaining. Our value proposition for our buyers is we'll get you equal to or better quality of food and equal to or equal, or better levels of service for about half price. That's kind of an intelligence test, right? So you want to buy that food? The next question, though, is where does it come from? How do you get this? And for our buyers, as food professionals, we can explain pretty easily, and they get it, and they see it, and it works for them. It's all an internet-enabled thing. It's a shared inventory kind of a model. So in the same way that Amazon really owns only maybe 10% of their inventory, most of it is seller-owned. We're on the same model, so our suppliers are going to pay to throw away perfectly good food. We give them ability to generate revenue that would have otherwise ended up as waste. And then whatever we don't sell in our marketplace, we donate to food banks and charitable organizations around hunger relief and operate on a zero landfill policy. So we have contracts with pet food companies and zoos and pig farms, and there's all kinds of, it's crazy because they are cheaper. I mean, we actually generate a little revenue from a pig farm, and you actually have to pay to throw it away. And it's kind of like, it's economically and environmentally better, but it's the flexibility that's lacked in the system that we're really addressing. So for us, lost food falls into kind of three categories, just very briefly. So probably the biggest is oversupply. So we're catching all of this oversupply that happens in the system. The second we put into kind of a bucket of imperfects. It could be cosmetic, it could be short date. A lot of times there's brand changes. So if a big manufacturer does a brand change, whatever's in the system gets thrown away because they made a brand change. So, but it's perfectly good product, and the nature of our customers, they're going to unbrand it anyway. They're going to turn it into a meal. So it's not a problem for those kinds of changes. And then locals. And sometimes on local product, what we're finding is lots of restaurants and institutional kitchens want to do local. They may even have corporate mandates to do local, and they have no mechanism for doing it. So we're actually now creating this conduit. Sometimes it's local that's related to seconds. I'll give you an example. Colorado's second largest potato producing state, second to Idaho. In Denver, 90% of the potatoes that are consumed by restaurants are from Idaho. I'm telling you, the Colorado Potato Farmers Association is not particularly blessed by that. And part of the problem is they don't have any kind of mechanism to deal with their seconds. So French fries, hash browns, those kinds of things, they're not getting into restaurants because they don't have a mechanism to get to the market. So the big food system actually kind of works against them. So that's kind of that third category of local that we work on. And then again, as I mentioned, what we don't sell, and about 25% of what comes into our marketplace goes to charitable donation. We double to triple the amount of food that goes to charitable. We've tracked data, we've done data studies up and back on this. Because again, some of the concern was, great, now Food Maven's going to gift this food that was otherwise going to charities. We double to triple the amount of food that goes to donation because we've created an economic system for incenting and all of the logistics to kind of pull it off. So good news is, again, we're thrilled with the growing visibility around food waste. I mean, for us, it's always a little bit of a, because we don't sell food waste. We are something that's intervening on food that's going to get lost that would ultimately turn into waste. So we're happy for all of the attention on waste, but we tend to kind of be looking upstream. And again, we're not addressing the consumer issue. So 40% or so of food waste is coming out of consumers, refrigerators, restaurants, whatever. And we don't really have any play on that. But again, we're really happy to see. Personally, I've got backyard chickens that get whatever little bit that would have otherwise composted. It runs through our chickens first, and then goes to our garden. And so I think there's lots of good things that are happening with people being kind of more in line. But there's a lot of work to do on just influencing consumer behavior. But I do think, the thing that I hope you hear, this is less about what we're doing, more of an appeal to say, let's look up the stream. We want to think about waste. Let's look upstream to how that could have occurred and try and do things that fundamentally, change the system. The way we message with the big food system partners that we have is that we're looking to be this flexible, agile capability that's really a complement to the food system. But I will tell you, our hope is that the food system looks different. And I think we all can have a role in helping transform the food system as a way to deal with the kind of the root cause versus the symptom of waste.
So how big a barrier to the food system you envision is state and federal regulation, tax codes, whatever that may be?
Yes, we've actually, we just got a fairly sizable grant from the state of Colorado for what we're doing. And again, we're venture backed. We're just about at $12 million raised. We are a for-profit, a mercenary for-profit, generate big returns for our investors. And that's because we can do that, we can raise the capital to do this thing. So, but what we found is there's a surprising amount of kind of money and support that's available. So we got a sizable grant from the state of Colorado, And it was really around the waste reduction that we do. So I think that there's, and Megan Cornish is in the back. Megan, wave your hand. So she's our Vice President of Government and Industry Affairs. You normally wouldn't expect a startup to have somebody with that title, but if you're in the food business. So it is, I think, if you're going to address the system, you have to figure out how you have active partnerships around policy advocacy. So, I mean, we're active around legislative and policy issues as well, because we think it's in our enlightened self-interest. It's the right thing to do, and we think it actually is the right thing that helps our business as well. I mean, I hope you understand. I mean, we are a for-profit, but with a very clear social impact. I mean, we are very passionate about making the food system better, addressing hunger, and addressing environmental impacts. And the people that are investors with us care about those things as well. They're looking for venture returns, they're venture capitalists. But there's a growing, even in the venture world, there's a growing demand of investors that are saying, we don't just want to, do something that generates a lot of money. We have to feel like it changes the world for the better as well. Yeah.
So what's your geographic region?
So right now we're just in Colorado. So we are really refining the model in Colorado, and about 12 months from now we'll start the process of rolling out to 50 metro service areas across the United States. We are a metro service area 50. So we are a metro service area focused thing, and there's two reasons for that, at least for now. Number one is we need density of food. So the food system creates density around metro service areas. And so our suppliers, we have to be able to get this lost food as part of the supply side of what we do. And then our service model, our logistics model looks more like Amazon Prime Now than the traditional food system. So we're all optimized from receiving food to delivered food in 48 hours. So from the time we get it at the dock and we're delivering it to the restaurant is all tuned and optimized for a 48-hour turn. The food system does not work like that, right? So, and the only way you can do that is with high service densities. You have to have density to be able to do those logistics models. So that's part of the innovation of what we do, and of course it's all technology enabled, but we have these really intense logistics models, local logistics models for both supply as well as buy side. And this takes a lot of capital. I mean, we roll trucks, we have freezers, refrigerators, we do all food handling, we have HACCP plans, we're certified now for seafood, so we've got all of the food handling best practices, and 48-hour turn, and so it's not for the faint of heart.
And how long did it take you time-wise to now you say you're going to deploy in 50 metros? So from let's say the start of when you got on board and said this is an idea, you're going to raise, and how long did it take?
So it's been almost 4 years from first working the idea. Mm-hmm. There was 2 years of just working the idea and doing kind of legwork. I've been a venture-backed CEO a bunch of times. One of the things that I know is to create it takes 5 to 10 years to create an overnight success. So we've spent a lot of time, building foundation. We formed the company 2 years ago, almost to the day, and then we raised some additional capital. We went live with the marketplace, so we went live with kind of the initial prototype about a year ago. The first money we raised from friends, family, and fools. We told them, hey, listen, we don't know if this is going to work until money and food are changing hands that would have otherwise ended up in a landfill. That was our mantra for the first, quarter or two. And then it just took off. So we've been growing 50% month over month, and it's hard to keep up with that growth, that kind of a growth trajectory. So we're just closing a $10 million round now. So yeah, it gives a little sense. It takes a long time. And we know too that, I don't really think we're going to have a chance to kind of declare victory for 10 to 15 years, because it's a big system transformation thing that we're working to do. Yeah.
So what's your infrastructure? Do you have one distribution center, 17 trucks? What do you have on the ground?
So good question. And this is a gritty business, right? This is not some don't get dirty, social media software thing. And I've done those. And they're easier, but not as actually rewarding. So we've got right now 3 different warehouse facilities. And that's really just a function of like staging up growth, because it's hard to justify taking down 100,000 square feet of. But we still are a much lighter, because again, it's a fast turn. So compared to other food system, I think we'll be 100,000 square foot is kind of what a typical warehouse will be for us. So we've got, forklift in, freezers, refrigerators, all the kind of commercial stuff, forklifts. Our rolling inventory, our fleet is a little different. We have everything from tractors and 53-foot, reefer trailers to 26-foot refrigerated straight trucks. And then we're Ford Connects or Ford Transits refrigerated, and then Ford Transit Connects unrefrigerated. So we have a really diverse rolling inventory, which is very different than the food system. The rest of the food system, it's like, Cisco has 10,000 semis and trailers, and that's the one size hammer they have, and they run a semi out to deliver 3 cartons of product. We roll a Ford Transit Connect to do that. So we've got we essentially are in every single dimension trying to right size the assets for optimization of the logistics model. So we live and die by our cost of goods is only logistics, right? Because we don't own the product. So if you want to be very profitable in our business, you have to be incredibly efficient at logistics.
Create Compost Connect, an online platform that connects urban residents with local compost haulers to promote food waste diversion. Let's welcome Harini.
It's kind of overwhelming and hard to follow Patrick, because he's done what we hope to do for the other part, right? As he said, he's doing pre-consumer food reduction. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. Pre-consumer, and we are looking at post-consumer. What happens after you eat it? Where does it go? So kind of following up with him. So it's a little intimidating to follow him, but he talked about most of this stuff. So I'm going to just talk about more of a personal journey as how a tool that I envisioned, from what I envisioned and what it has evolved to right now. So as Susan mentioned, so it's an online platform at this point, which connects urban residents that are doing curbside compost collection to their compost hauler. It's as simple as that. And I'm going to talk about so we are a baby when it comes to this at the business development end, and we are making more mistakes and learning from it than I can give you, this is what we did and this is what we have. So bear with me, ask me questions. I'm mostly like a gesture person and stand and talk and be like a windmill, so it's going to be a little difficult for me to sit and talk. But here's where it started. So I spent a little bit of time as a nutritionist counseling patients to lose weight in a hospital. So that's my start. I have a degree in nutrition as far back as a bachelor's, and I used to be very, very successful at it. And I was one of the very few that people would be like, you should go to her, she's very good. And the reason was not because I had any secret formula or anything like that. It was because I was a fat kid myself, and I had done that journey, having, got the awareness, and I knew all the mistakes or all of the reasons that that my patients overate, or the kind of things that they could do on an everyday basis. So basically, that's what personal experience is very important. And so when you look at people that are, that are on this food waste diversion spectrum, right? That's what I call. Every one of us is on a spectrum of a sustainability spectrum. So it's our responsibility, I believe, to find somebody that's ahead of us, find somebody that's behind us, kind of emulate the person that's ahead of us and get, do a little bit better, and kind of pull along somebody that's behind us, motivate them. Just in one act, or one action or one different change, and we will be better. In 10 years, there will be a lot more this thing. And that's kind of how I think about it. And in this is kind of where people are right now, let's say. And I have spent a lot of time in each of these stages, so I kind of know what it would take to kind of go to the next level, right? Like, so for the longest time, I was just landfilling my food, and I was like, oh, maybe should change, but everybody else is doing it. Why do I care? The next one is like, you know, it gets more like, oh, I know I have to do, but I'm just too lazy to do it. That's a lot of people. Now it's, you know, so you give them services like, you know, we'll come pick it up from your household. You don't have to do anything, you know, you just have to pay us. But they are ready. At that point, I would have paid $15 a month to have somebody come pick it up, and it's the same. And then I didn't have that option, so I was like, okay, I still want to do something about it. So then I started doing community composting, right? So I would take my stuff to a community composting site, and at that point, if I had like some other incentive to do it, it would have been nice. Like, I would like to be rewarded for doing the right thing. So that's how I see it. Like, everybody has a price, and I don't want to like say economic, but there is a certain way you can basically get them to turn over to the next way. So that's kind of, the idea is to keep moving people to the left side of the spectrum. So that's the point. So where did I start? So, and as all good stories start, it started with me losing my job as a scientist. You know, overnight, I didn't know what to do with 80 hours a week that I was putting in the lab, you know, and when you're used to working a lot, and suddenly somebody gives you free time, it's like, what? You know, so this is what happened. And so I decided that I was going to do a survey on barriers to composting in the Milwaukee area, and I joined up with Compost Kids, which is the nonprofit that Susan talked about, and we did a survey and we just asked questions. And we found out that of all of the people, only like 9%, very few people were actually taking it to the community composting site. They knew they had to compost, they were dumping it in the trash, and they would definitely compost. And the best part of all, almost 80% of the people would, you know, pay for a composting service. That's where I found out, like, there are a lot of lazy people. And some of the programmatic challenges. For example, as a nonprofit, we would like to know how much people are diverting. So all they have to do is go to a website and record how much they contributed to our community composting site. And we weren't getting it. And people were saying, but that community composting site is so far away. So this is a all volunteer organization. So we have 5 people, and we have 5 composting sites that we maintain personally, right? And that's it. So these were the questions that were in my mind. And then, like all very naive people, I said, I wonder if there is an app for that, you know? And no, there was no app. So that was the next step. Yep, okay, I guess I'm standing up. This is my thing. Okay.
The batteries are probably dead.
All right. This is my team. Oh, evidently.
We always
I might have turned on a fire. Okay, I'm gonna keep talking. So what I did was, people send me information all the time. They said, there is this competition down in Chicago, and you should go participate in it. And the competition is called the Urban Sustainability Hackathon. It is put up by this nonprofit called the Center for Neighborhood Technologies. And the idea is that CNT brings together a pool of technology talent, so developers, software developers, and designers, and puts them, like, they donate their time for 48 hours. And if you are a community leader, or you think that there is an urban challenge that you could help solve, you go and pitch to them, and basically, thank you. And so brings together a technological team, and you create an app at the end of 48 hours. You present. So that's where I went. I pitched the idea. This is what I wanted to do, because I said, what if we created more community composting sites? So we have big sites, but maybe there is a backyard composter over there that really likes to compost, has the time and the space to do it, but is not getting enough starting material. And what if we connected him or her to 5 or 6 people in the neighborhood that would bring their waste to them, and then they can do the composting and create soil and give away the soil to whoever needs. So basically that was my pitch. And that coming from where I was, this seemed like the best way to solve this problem. And Allison was this is Allison, clearly. Allison is the first one that was like, I want to do this. And she kind of brought along John. So we were a team. It was a very, like, the best 48 hours I had spent in, a year. So we came up with like this product. What would it do? We wanted to connect the 3 people that would be ideally involved in this. So you have the composter, and then the residents that would want to bring their waste to be converted to soil, and then the urban gardener or an urban farmer who wants the soil, right? So we wanted to connect these 3 people and close the loop. And in this, we wanted to create basically a search function. So you would go online and search for somebody that is closest to you, and then you would connect to them, and you would be in their network, and then you would have like a connection. And then communication, basically somebody, you can say, bring this here, or like, I have this much today, or I have soil ready. That was kind of the 3 main features that we wanted: search, connect, communicate. So that's what we did. We had a sign up where you could sign up as either a resident, a composter, or a farmer. It kind of like, we asked questions, and then this was used to match it up in the search function. So there was a match algorithm that would then, like, say, if I only wanted to choose composters that will come and pick it up in front of my door, it will only match me to those composters. But if I were able to take it to wherever, so it would give me a better search. So that was kind of our initial sign up, and then we went to this onboarding where you would get like a little, primer in composting if you were a complete newbie, and you could start it, So you had like that onboarding process, and then basically you would get your matches. So that was, basically on a map you would see how close they are, how to get, and so basically that was it. And then you had, these were the, like, without signing up, this is what you could see, kind of envision where like all of the people are and how many people are in a neighborhood and that kind of a thing. So that was our MVP, and we had a lot of, so this would be a profile page. So we kind of wanted to bring it like more, where it would just automatically add to the calendar and that kind of thing. So we had a pretty good product at the end of 48 hours. As a team, we didn't hate each other, we had a great time. So what I did was, I'm like, we should continue working on this and see where it goes. Like, all it took me was a dinner at a Greek restaurant and just some good one-on-one time and a couple of bottles of wines, and and that's where like, I'm like, we should totally continue to do this, and I'll continue to talk to people in the community and see who the stakeholders are. That's what I did. So Milwaukee is a fairly nascent, like, so we are just creating all of this. So that at that point, it didn't have a curbside compost pickup service for residents, right? So I was like, okay, but I knew the people that were in this community because I was working. Melissa Tashjian is one of the innovator in this area in the city of Milwaukee. She actually started Compost Kids, and she had just spun off this for-profit called Compost Crusader, and she was picking up Compost from food service businesses, so from a bunch of restaurants. And she was going to pitch an idea for a pilot curbside compost program to the city of Milwaukee. So we were talking, and I had basically given her a couple of slides from my survey and said there is a lot of interest in this kind of a thing. You should totally show this to the city. And the city looked at the data and said, well, instead of for 100 households, we're going to greenlight the program for 500 households. So this was happening kind of parallel to when I was working. So I went back to her and I said, hey, I'm writing to these business competitions. Would you be able to give me a reference saying that the data helped? And she said, I'll do you one better. The city just greenlighted it for 500 households. How about you make me an app for where I can send out information about pickup and that kind of thing that I would use to communicate with these 500 people, right? So that was like the start of it. So that's what we did. We went and created an iPhone app. That was the first one. And we had some features that she wanted. So for example, one of the features was when you have a pickup scheduled, you will get a notification saying that your pickup is scheduled for this particular day. And she had like several routes, so different people got it different. So we had to match based on who had downloaded and their address, so that so there was a little bit of administrative stuff involved. So so you download the app and you basically put in your address, and you can directly connect to the compost hauler, which is Compost Crusader at that point, and then say okay, send me notifications, and you get notifications. What else did it have? Does it have? It's still you can download it for your iPhones. And it's basically like a list of searchable do's and don'ts, like what is allowed in it and what is not. Since this was a city program, we had to get all of this okayed by the city before we even put it out. So that was, I want you to keep this in mind, because I don't think it was the best idea to deal with the city off the gate. But you live and learn. So then we had these cute little, stuff that we could send out, just to keep them reminded of what they can put in and what they can't, as a continuing education too, right? So that's what. But the best and the most glamorous thing that we wanted to achieve in this app was a contribution tracker, where we would get the data from Melissa to see how much each person was diverting, and turn that into a graph that people can follow. And then we would have her idea was we could then have neighborhoods and see which neighborhood is diverting more and that kind of thing, which would have all been great, except one of the things and there are privacy concerns and everything, we understand that, but the problem was we didn't start with the planning, so we weren't on board right at the planning session, so we didn't reach all of the people that we could have reached. So we had 500 people, only 85 people actually signed up to download the app, and of them only 50 people downloaded the app. Now, given that we only have an iPhone app, so probably that was the reason, but we only have 10% of penetration. That was the first challenge, so we are 50 people. Another thing was software wise, personally identifying information, your name and address are more identifiable than your email address. Okay, so that is understood. That's kind of because your email address is more anonymized than your personal thing. So when we ask the city, say, we need to be able to match automatically the route with the email address, because that is much easier than, we had to go through the addresses that people had put in and refer back. The city, I don't think they understood the level, and they kind of was I don't think we can share it. We have told our customers we will not share the information to anybody, so we are not going to share it. Yes, so this is part of timing and learning. This could go wrong, but that was it. That was the biggest obstacle. And Melissa, because she has to deal with the city and has to, she's on contract with them. She couldn't share any of the data with us because then she got like, I don't know if I want to do this. So that's where it kind of stopped. So we have an app, we have a web portal, we don't have customers. So what do? You go and talk to people. And that's what we did. So Allison and John are in Chicago, and for my day job as a scientist, I work in Chicago quite a bit. So I went to a bunch of food sustainability stuff in Chicago, and we talked to the people at the Urban Canopy. Urban Canopy is a really neat little business that does farming, urban agriculture, and they have a CSA. They also have a compost club, so they already have a closed loop business. So we kind of talked to them, and we are working with them now, and basically I just go everywhere and pitch to people, and so that's what happened in New York City. So we're like, I was going to East Coast, I sent out like 10 different emails, only one person responded, and now they are our partners. So I guess that's a good thing. If you talk to me, you're going to be convinced. So basically what we are doing is we are working with these are now independent compost haulers that own their own businesses, but they have certain pain points. Don't worry about this, it's very word heavy. So what they are doing right now is, since there is no specifically tailored software solution for them, they're using multiple platforms, right? Google Sheets, PayPal for payment, and maybe other like Slack or text or email for communication, and it's all kind of bifurcated among different platforms, and they find it very hard to keep track of all of these platforms first. Second, to bring together the different things. Like for example, they may have to sign on into different things to different accounts to keep track of these multiple things. One. Second, they spend a lot of time doing this because they are doing it manually across platform. So the time that they could be spending developing their business or doing other things or even taking a break, these people work very, very hard. And so basically that was their thing, right? We are using Google Maps and Slack and text and email and Google Sheets, and actually Urban Canopy has they have hacked their Google Sheets so much, but now they are actually testing the limits of Google Sheets. They are overwhelming their Google Sheets right now. So that's what we are okay, so what do we need to create for them? We want to create a one-stop. So you have one account, all of your member database is there, and you can keep track of everything right there in one account, and all of the things that can be automated. For example, invoices and billing reminders, and if somebody hasn't paid the bill, then all of those things can be easily automated. And we want to be able to automate those and basically create a streamlined system for these people that is tailored to them specifically, and then save time for them so that they can do other things, right? So that's what we have. Right now we have a two-part system. One is a desktop app or a web app for haulers. So this will have a sign-in, and they can see all of their members as soon as they sign in, and the members are then all of these which route they are in, and then whether it's a monthly pickup, weekly pickup, or bi-weekly pickup, have they paid, where their address is, and all of that stuff. That is basically then it's between the compost hauler and the resident, and so we don't have any privacy this thing, and they can manage it themselves. They kind of they can change, and then there is communication that you can send out either pickup reminders through the web portal. You can have one-to-one communication within that, as well as one-to-many, and then there is all of the education and that kind of stuff. And hopefully, and we are working on this, we will have that contribution log, because most of these people actually weigh and measure how much is diverted, and we want to capture that and make it into meaningful data, not just for the people that are diverting it, but also to inform policy, to inform other things, to know like what is the impact that these people are creating, right? So that's kind of where we are at on that side. And the resident is basically a mobile app they can download on their phone. Ultimately, we want geolocation, where you can just go to a new city, download this app, find out whoever is the nearest compost hauler, and basically like join with them. You know, it should be that easy. It's like, you know, having trash pickup or, you know, electricity or something like that. So that's the plan, and we have other things that we are going to carry over from what I showed you with the iPhone app. Where do we hope to evolve from here? Clearly, the first step would be to show to haulers. We have 2 partners right now. We're working on adding more, but first we want to prove with these 2 that we can actually provide value for them, and, you know, like help them increase the number of subscribers that they have, right? So that would be our first goal. Second is to be able to add more of such haulers. And there are like, every city now actually has an independent business that is doing something like this. Some are doing it with bicycles, and some are doing it with their like cars. Some have a beat up Ford van that they are using. But people actually are waking up to the economic opportunity that this can bring, and actually it's growing. Urban Canopy can't keep up with the member growth that they have, and mostly it is just word of mouth advertisement. Like, people are like, oh, you should try this service, this is really cool, only $15 a month, you know. So that kind of that's what we want to do ultimately. And the biggest interest and challenge would be to have restaurants to buy in, so that we are also creating value both for the restaurants and for the compost hauler. So let's say a pizza restaurant signs up with the compost hauler to divert, or, you know, divert their food waste. Then they also have connection to all of the residents that the compost hauler has. So, you know, they have a network. They can then kind of like get access to the network, and that's what we want to facilitate. And then ultimately, I would still, you know, I haven't given up on this, where like somebody that has a backyard and wants to compost can still, you know, have like the de novo network created, you know. So, but that is our ultimate goal. We will see where we go, as I said. But that's kind of where I want to do. Just to talk about, so this is, I am operating as a for-profit business as well, but it is not venture backed yet. We don't know where we are going, but I have identified some sources of revenue. We are going to have the compost haulers subscribe at a certain subscription fee. That would be one source of revenue, and we are building a payment platform very much like PayPal, and it will be like a percentage of the payments that are processed, and that will generate some revenue. So that's kind of our 2 main sources of revenue we're focusing on. I am open to more feedback and ideas. So if you guys have any ideas or questions, I'm here to answer them and learn from you as much. And please visit our webpage. We are on Facebook and Twitter, so if you follow us, you'll know what we are up to. And if you are one of those compost haulers that are operating in Des Moines or anywhere in Iowa, get in touch with us. We would love to partner with you, and I hope I stayed within my time. Okay, so that's it. Yes.
So you are open to working in other communities and?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
We've got some, I think, Des Moines, we've got some people here in Des Moines that would.
Yes.
Like
We want to establish as many of these people, like partner with as many people as we can. So yes.
They'll connect.
Yeah.
All right, let's give Harini another round of applause. I feel like we might go over a little bit, but and if you have any more questions, maybe that would also be great at the end. But last but not least, and back to that edible food, we have Allie Wilson. Allie Wilson is the Midwest Regional Coordinator for the Means Database, a nonprofit that prevents food waste by streamlining food donations to charities who need them via text and email notifications. She's in charge of contacting possible food donors and charities in the Midwest who could benefit from using the database. In addition to being a regional coordinator, Allie is one of the co-directors of Donation Drivers, an Iowa initiative to prevent food waste by paying charities to pick up donated food. Through Means Database, Allie has become an advocate for food security and the prevention of food waste. In addition to national food security, Allie is interested in food security abroad as well. She has studied sustainable agriculture in places like Costa Rica, Uganda, and Brazil. Allie is currently a senior at Iowa State University, completing her bachelor's in global resources systems. So let's welcome Allie.
Thanks. I'm gonna walk around. I'm still kind of young, so I'm gonna just get up. I'm 21.
Versus
so.
us old people who just sit in chairs.
Sorry. Didn't mean to offend. All right. So I'm Allie, and I'm with the Means Database, and most of you are probably wondering, all right, where'd that name come from? So Means stands for Matching Excess and Need for Stability. So we're a nonprofit, and we're focused on making sure that food that would otherwise be wasted would go to nonprofits that need it. So as a team, we're 20 staff, interns, and volunteers spread across 5 states. Most of us are college students. I think the oldest person on our team is 30, and we kind of make fun of him for being the old man. So since most of our team are college students, a lot of us kind of have an understanding of, you know, there's a lot of food waste. We see it in our campus. We see a bunch of us kind of throwing out a lot of food, and almost like everyone in the room, we kind of think, what can we do to stop that? And how can we make sure that this food really gets to someone who needs it? So that's about me. 4 years working with food security reduction. Been with Means for about 3 years now. I started off as a volunteer when I heard that there was a group of college students that were focusing on getting food from different organizations and making sure that charities within certain areas really made sure that they got that food. So right now we have users all across the nation, because with our organization we really want to make sure that we have a network that works no matter where you are. We have a bunch of different experiences. We have L'Oreal Paris, we have Mary Claire, the World Food Prize based in Des Moines, which is kind of where we really started as an organization. And we really want to make sure that we have a broader network. So Means is a website, and what we do is we really want to make sure that organizations have a one-stop place to communicate. How many people in the room are working with a nonprofit? Okay, so you guys know how hard it could be to communicate. So when it comes to getting a donation, or even finding an organization to get a donation from, you probably have to make a lot of calls, a lot of connections, send so many emails, and just kind of really make sure that you have the time to kind of sit down and make those partnerships. Well, with Means, we want to take that away from you and give you a new option to make new partnerships and to make communication easier. So, what we do is we make donating easy. We make sure that people who want to donate food have one website that they can go on, see what they really focus on. Oh, is this laser? Perfect. All right. So basically, you can kind of post food, whatever type of food that you have. So if you're a caterer, if you're a business, if you're a dorm and you have, let's say, 1,000 pounds of 1 ounce pizza sauce packets, which we have gotten that donation before. Basically, you get the chance to say exactly what you have, where it is, and how long it takes for it to expire. and even offer categories. So if it's something that has protein in it, or if it's different kind of focusing on like low sodium, gluten-free, you could definitely put that. And we also allow our users to do retail value and weight, because certain nonprofits can't take larger donations, as some of you may know. We often have an issue where organizations go to smaller nonprofits and think, this is a food pantry. You know what, let's just give them like whatever leftovers we have. They can handle it, right? No, not always. So a lot of times we get calls saying, hi, so I'm a really small food pantry in northern Vermont. Someone dropped a 1,000-pound donation. We have a closet, so we cannot handle this. Can you please help us? So what we do is we invite them to try our system and make sure that, is it still working? All right, perfect. To make sure that they have a better understanding of where they can make a better connection and give the food to someone who can handle it. So, to make sure that they're not getting email notifications about food that they don't want or can't handle, we make sure that donors who express interest get that category of food that they really want. So, if you're a food pantry and you've kind of gotten enough bread to last you a lifetime, or enough pasta to feed your entire service area, you're probably not focusing on getting donations in that area. So we make sure that if you want vegetables, you only hear about vegetables. If you want baby food, if you're looking for a specific type of item, you're not really searching through a whole listing on this huge website trying to find that one specific item. So you can decide if you want to claim it. What we do is we send out text and email notifications the minute that something is posted within a certain area of you. And we also have it set up so that you have a mile radius too. So you don't get notifications about food that you don't want that's 50 miles away and that you have no way to access it. So we also kind of operate like Uber. So I'm assuming that everyone in the room has used Uber. So rather than just kind of having these organizations talk to each other and kind of drop off food and then go on their merry way. Oh dear, what did I do? Fixed it, all right. So what we kind of make sure that we do is give a feedback system. So then if you don't really want to work with a certain nonprofit, you could go and say, all right, so I didn't really enjoy the transaction that we had, and then we kind of take that feedback. So we have a better idea of how our transactions are going, what type of issues there are, and how we fix them. So the food that we move, I'm sure that everyone in the room has at least one food story that just kind of makes you think, how is this happening? A lot of my panel members have talked about excess, how people don't necessarily have the resources, things such as that. So just a few examples. We've had bacon and eggs from a corporate breakfast, and we moved that to a homeless shelter between breakfast and lunch. That food would have been thrown out because there's not often a market. People aren't always going to corporate events. They aren't necessarily saying, you know what, we should probably take care of this food, but because we should probably feed the hungry. Sometimes it can be a little harder and it takes a lot of effort. So how can we make sure that that effort is easier and that we don't necessarily have to spend 30 minutes calling 50 different food pantries in this area? Another thing that we have was 3,600 brown bag lunches from a cookout to food pantry in 5 hours. We have another story with 2 pallets of dried beans that were an excess order. As Patrick said, there are plenty of organizations that accidentally overorder food. And when they kind of have that leftover food, they don't really necessarily know where to put it. And you don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time calling food pantries again. So that was from a soup kitchen to an immigrant service organization in one day. And finally, 67 cartons of milk. So milk is a really, really important kind of staple, especially when it comes to children. So we were actually seeing that in DC, they were teaching kids, rather than if they don't drink their milk, what they teach them to do is to empty the milk into the garbage can, so then you can recycle the bottle. So they were wasting gallons and gallons of milk that could have otherwise been donated. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the DC area, they have a high rate of poverty, and I believe that it's 1 in every 4 children in the DC metro area are on free or reduced lunches. So our CEO, Maria Rose, she went to these schools and said, hey, rather than having kids dump the milk and then recycle the bottle, why don't we stop the milk from being dumped and give it to other organizations and other children who need it? So we moved from school lunch leftovers to food pantry and over the weekend. And we made sure that the cold chain was held up for everyone who's involved in food safety. We really make sure that we're dealing with organizations that know how to serve food and how to make sure that the chain between food safety from the nonprofit, from the donor, is kind of kept in between a safe area. So technology has been a real theme, and making sure that we have the technology to make communication easier and to make these transactions go through quickly is so important. So we're really trying to make sure that you get text and email notifications as quickly as possible, because a lot of the food that we get, it expires so quickly that you really want to make sure that people in an area know the minute it's posted, so then you're not letting food waste as time goes on. We're powered by Ruby on Rails. So this program, for those of you who are not coders, which I'm definitely not, we use Ruby on Rails, which is a very advanced kind of system. It powers Twitter, Airbnb. So I think it could handle us. It can handle nonprofits and food organizations throughout the country, because if it could power Twitter, I think that nonprofits could use it. So we also use Heroku, which is what Amazon uses for hosting, and it powers Netflix. So we're really trying to make sure that if a quick and easy streaming site for movies could do this, we could definitely make sure that we use that technology for food pantries to communicate. So how do we work with public organizations? How do we kind of make this network for our users and make sure that they don't have to spend hours a day going to different food pantries and trying to make those connections, because that's a lot of time that could be spent towards getting food and feeding the people that you need to feed, and kind of giving you more time to focus on your organization as a whole. So what we do is communicate with organizations who want to cut food waste. It's becoming a hot topic right now. A lot of people are starting to gain a better understanding of it. So we're really trying to focus on reaching out to organizations who are trying to kind of get into the more sustainable model. So a lot of these organizations don't necessarily know how to best donate food. And honestly, it can be confusing, because you might not know what food pantries are in your area, how the whole system works, and just kind of making sure that they understand the rules and regulations. So we also help government agencies connect with our existing network. So we provide outreach materials for agencies to reach out to nearby food pantries, making sure that they understand, oh hey, this food pantry is in your area. This is how you could really focus on hanging out, talking to them, and making sure that they understand that you know how to handle food and you know how to properly donate it. We've also given tools to sign up local restaurants, grocery stores, catering companies, schools. We also have had different farms sign up. Anyone who's involved with food in any capacity can sign up on Means and make sure that their food that would otherwise be wasted would go to those in need. Now, it's not on an individual basis, and it's not on a family basis. Usually we want to make sure that we're dealing with food retailers and people who have a solid understanding of the food system. And we kind of make sure that we help them evaluate partnerships and have a better understanding of how to make their partnerships successful. So by making sure that they have a better communication system and that they understand how to access more donors quickly to give them a more solid organizational structure when it comes to networking and getting the food that they need. So the program that I'm in charge of that is a focus that we're trying to do here in Iowa is tackling transportation. So when it comes to a small nonprofit, they might necessarily have an issue with picking up donations because if you're working at a small volunteer church, you're probably not going to want to drive 20 minutes away to pick up a donation. So what we're trying to do is make an incentive for transportation. We got a grant from the Iowa Department of Natural Resources to cut back solid food waste. And basically what we're doing is incentivizing this through our donation drivers program. Nonprofits get the chance to get the food that they need, pick up free donated food, and get reimbursed $10 for their transportation time, excuse me. And it's open to all of our Iowa users. So when you sign up on our site, when you list that you are from Iowa, you are automatically a part of the program. And the way that it works is you are automatically reimbursed $10 for every donation that you pick up through us. So you're getting donated food, absolutely free, and you're getting $10. So we're making sure that you have enough incentivization to get food that would otherwise be wasted. And I believe that's where I'm at. And yeah, so if anyone has any questions, I'll be here for a decent chunk of the day. And yeah, thank you. Do I have enough time for questions?
Yeah, if there's questions for any of the panelists, I think for a few minutes.
Okay.
How's the donation drivers program going so far?
It's going pretty good. We actually have had quite a few donations. Autumn is in the room, and she's actually the head of the Food Recovery Network at Iowa State, and we've been partnering to make sure that any leftover food in the area, especially in the Ames area where our college is communicated between a lot of the nonprofits in the area.
We met you guys probably 2 years ago when you guys presented in Harvard. So we tried to initiate it immediately to help us recover more food. We could not get the pantries. So many of these pantries are run by older people with no computer skill. Or a computer. I mean, you know, they just kind of take what they get and say thank you. And so we couldn't, like, I didn't know if other people have found this to be true. You found it too, you're shaking your head.
No, I'm just
You're
acknowledging
understanding.
So
I mean, so many, maybe because the pantries we were trying are, like you said, you know, it's a closet. Like, you know, there's not a lot of space for them, but I did get one of the pantries to list something, you know, and I got the notification. So he was working with me in the beginning, and then he was like, oh, you know. So I don't know, maybe the technology in the last couple of years has made it a little more user-friendly. Because he was a pretty smart guy at that pantry. He was having a hard time with it.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry you had that experience. So we are a new nonprofit. We've been in focus for about 2 years. We have been really trying to make sure that our website is accessible to those who are not necessarily computer savvy. And I make a lot of the phone calls to make our partnerships, and I've been on many phone calls where an elderly person might not necessarily know how to access our website, let alone open a browser on Internet Explorer. So we're really trying to make sure that we're accessing our audience. We completely understand that a lot of these smaller nonprofits who really need our help might not have the technology, so we're focusing on making it easier to donate via an app, via your telephone, or by your computer. And we've also been collecting data to see, okay, so when we call this food pantry, do they have a computer on site? Do they have someone with a cell phone? Do they have any way to get a notification? Or if we could access them during text? Kind of making sure that we could expand that and expand our reach. So we're definitely looking into new ways to make it easier for those who might not necessarily be tech savvy. So even on our website, we're trying to make sure that our text is easier to read, to make sure that the different text colors are more elderly friendly.
I was gonna say
Did I say
old
that?
people friendly.
Sorry, I'm trying to stay away from the whole millennial condescending.
Okay, when you're
Sorry. No, but we completely understand that our audience is usually someone who's older, someone my grandmother's age who's working at a small pantry at their church. So we're really trying to hit that audience.
And at the same time, do you have people that go to different cities to try to promote your means database that would be that person that would help us out? I mean, we have large and we have small, but do you have people who are your sales force that are trying?
Yep.
So in Cincinnati, do you have a contact that maybe we could talk to? Because we'd really like to get it going.
That's me.
Okay.
Hello, and I will give you my, I can hand out my card to anyone at the end.
Okay.
We're across the nation. I believe we're in 48 states at the moment. And the way that we kind of focus on building our partnerships is doing cold calls, is going to conferences like this to make sure that we're reaching as many people as we can. We even have a list of different organizations that we try to contact. So we have interns, we have volunteers who basically have a list of phone numbers for organizations that aren't necessarily food pantries, but do deal with food. So like domestic violence shelters or after school programs. We've recently had a successful program in Philadelphia where we worked with the Philly Parks and Rec department and their summer school feeding programs and taking any food that's left over there and distributing it to immigration centers, to nonprofits in the area who kind of focus on feeding people during their time at this nonprofit, work centers, programs like that. Did that answer the question?
Yes, and I would be happy to be in touch with you.
No, of course.
We're already plotting over
Yeah.
here.
Hi, my name is Angel. I'm with Ohio EPA. That's not the federal EPA, that's state. I manage the composting and organic recycling programs. I would like to meet also with them and you to see how our program can help support something in the Cincinnati area.
Yeah, of course. I'd love to do that.
All right, I think we're complete. Let's give them a round of applause again. Thank you so much. I think we're at a break time now, so reminder, please use the app to rate the session, and the next session in here will be food by the numbers, measurement, tracking, and data.
Okay.
Okay, we're on.